Segmentation for the win. Now, defenders know where the puck is going, yet we still seem to be reluctant to be there first. In this 20-minute final period, we will cover the success of the adversary and the opportunity that exists for defenders. So I did a little bit of research and I asked AI, what are the last 10 major healthcare cyber breaches that were reported in 2024, early 2025? And the numbers are astounding. From 190 million individual records with one of the largest healthcare breaches ever recorded, down to 13.4, 9.3, 5.6 million records. And the problem is that we try to build these defensive capabilities in place, but the adversary has the ability to get past them. And once they do, they're able to move freely within the organization in which they compromise. And you might be thinking, well, okay, but we hear this in the news all the time. So what's really at risk here? Well, at 231 million records, the estimated cost per record is around $1,000 on the black market. And look at this. Now we're talking $231 billion just in healthcare from 2024 to early 2025. So this problem is not going away. If anything, we may see an increase of compromise because the adversary is certainly going to leverage things like AI to help them evade the capabilities that you put in place. So some of the common tactics include phishing, social engineering, insider threats, supply chain, vulnerabilities, credential theft, unauthorized data sharing. Now, we know this, and we put controls in place for many of these. The area that we lack most is coming up next. So we know the symptoms, and it's really time for a prescription. The key is knowledge, and we have that. We know 60 to 70% of all breaches involve lateral movement. We also know vulnerabilities play a significant role in breaches. The challenge has always been, how do we stop lateral movement in an environment that is complex? That just creating a firewall policy takes time because application and business owners don't know how the applications are communicating, and therefore it's left to the administrators to do the analysis to try to figure out what is and what isn't. That's why we see things like ransomware as a service be so successful in healthcare, like Black Cat, Clop, and Lockbit. Now, the cure can't be worse than the disease itself, so it can't be overly complicated. So I do believe the secrets are going to be revealed here. We are going to focus on where the adversary is going. We know they're going to take advantage of vulnerabilities. We know that. We know they're going to leverage things like pass the hash to be able to move laterally within the organization. We also know that they're going to live off the land. There's tooling that's going to be available to them to allow them to achieve their outcomes. We know RDP is going to be abused. And we know credential harvesting is going to take place. So we know all these things. What can we do about it? Well, we do some things here today. We've got things like endpoint detection and response. We've got gateway controls. But the point here is our defenses continue to be evaded. And it's time for us to go where the puck is going and not where it's been. And so we want to remove the complexity in the environment. We want to be able to build policy dynamically. We want to be able to win the battle. We don't want to be sitting here saying, again, we've been compromised. We're doing all the right things. What's going on? So we're going to remove the adversary's ability to freely move around in the organization. And so when we look at the campus environment, patient care network, there's lots of different devices. And so what we're going to need to do is have visibility. We're going to have to identify these capabilities and truly understand it. And things like AI endpoint analytics that might be built into your switch infrastructure is going to help you identify and profile endpoints and Internet of Things. It's going to allow you to assign labels to endpoints using the telemetry and information that is inherently part of the network. And we're going to be able to classify these assets and label them and build policy. In policy, we may need some help here. leveraging things like machine learning, be able to create these policies and allow us to push these quickly out into the environment as needed. But before we push that out, we want to simulate or at least be able to drive the controls in place without disrupting the environment. We want to be able to see whether or not the controls are going to provide a positive outcome and not disrupt the environment. And then we're going to enforce. And that's going to drive towards zero trust. And we're going to have security control mechanisms in place like DEFCON policy. And this is going to ensure that if the controls have to be a little bit more widely accessible based on the way the environment works, and an asset gets compromised or a new asset gets plugged into the network that shouldn't be there, it's not going to be able to move in the environment. It's not even going to be able to move within the layer 2 infrastructure. It's not going to be able to bounce around. And this is how we start winning the battle. Now, in the data center, it becomes very complex. You've got workloads that are on-premise, in the cloud, they're containers, they're virtual, they're physical, they're Linux, they're Windows. And understanding how to drive micro-based segmented policy in that environment becomes critically challenging. And so again, we want to understand whether we're at the kernel level, whether we're at a DPU on a switch, whether we're on the operating system. We want to be able to understand what processes need access to what services in order to provide the overall service in which it's servicing. And once we map that out, then it should be able to dynamically create the policy needed to drive towards a secured environment. And again, what we're going to want to do here is simulate policy before we actually do the enforcement, to ensure that when we do enforcement, we're not actually taking services down. We're driving the right outcomes at the right time to ensure that if an adversary does land on an asset, it's not going to be able to use it to pivot further into the infrastructure. And this will drive towards zero trust. And we introduce things like exploit protection. And this is going to ensure that even with vulnerable pieces of software that may exist in the environment that you can't patch, because maybe it's a critical patient care environment, we're still going to be able to protect that. And now we start looking towards the future, start to be able to map out these applications and services and how they communicate and build prescriptive-based policy that you can safely deploy within your environment. And when changes occur, you're going to be able to quickly get in front of those and drive the right controls at the right time. The other thing is around vulnerabilities, as I mentioned, specifically in the workload environment. We're going to wrap this up with some intelligence to be able to tell you with high levels of confidence what the true risk is. Not 7.5 to 10 and patch, but in fact that these vulnerabilities are putting the organization at risk with data science. And once we do that, we have the ability to be able to mitigate, because we may be at the kernel level. We have the ability to see every system and function call, and therefore when an adversary requires a certain thing to take place, like writing to a file or opening up a port for a netcat listener, we're going to get in front of that and block it. And we're going to do this with confidence. So how do we do that? Well, we created a digital twin of our production data plane. And therefore we have a shadow data plane that we can always test against. Whether this is upgrade or policy that we want to deploy in the environment, we can ensure CPU, memory, latency, and packets are passing the way that we think they should be passing before we transition the shadow data plane into the production data plane. And then you deploy those controls in the environment. That's how we stay relevant. That's how we stay on top of things. That's how we move faster than the adversary can move. Now we move up another stack, and now we're at the application layer. And now again, we want visibility. We want to understand what the users are using to communicate to what applications and build policy based on that, and then drive enforcement and ultimately driving zero trust. And when things change, then we may want to step up authentication. We want them to maybe prove themselves because they moved from a corporate Wi-Fi connection to a coffee shop, untrusted environment. And therefore, maybe access to patient care data should disappear because we don't trust the environment. Now think about this for a minute. We've got controls now on the campus. We've got controls within the workloads that are providing the services. And now we move controls also to the application layer. And so now we can create these very elaborate policies that say this user that connects to this corporate asset with this specific connection, with this specific posture, can access the network and take that context and share it to a workload policy that says this identity that we just discovered with all the rich context can only invoke this application or service, and that service can only be invoked by a service account within the workload environment. And when they access the application, we have an ability to also scrutinize the connection. Again, who are you? How are you connecting? Are you trusted or not trusted to access the application? And if you are, it's going to be a per session access and nothing more. We really start to tighten the controls in the environment. Now, some type of cloud controller is the only way we're going to be able to drive a lot of these outcomes. Now, not always, but a lot of times. But the benefit of that is that now we start driving towards an AI-powered platform that helps with assisting the team in driving towards those outcomes. It allows the team to optimize policy based on intelligence, and it assists the analyst or administrator on where best to put the control. And now we start seeing this ecosystem of capabilities, whether you're Cisco, your Palo Alto, your Fortinet, your Checkpoint. We should be able to extract the complexity, drive the controls into the infrastructure, all the way down to the switch, into the firewall, into the cloud, and into the data center and workload, all the way to the application. And that's how we go from being where the puck was to being where the puck is going.